What if you took all the charm and good and sweet and kind things of Stardew Valley and dialed up that combat to about 11 and added a coat of a little bit of a darker tone? That's kind of what's being asked here with this new upcoming game by none other than Cohh Carnage, or more accurately, Cohh Carnage and Cygnus Cross. We're talking about Embervale, a recently announced game from Cohh Carnage that I'm actually really freaking excited from. I was a little hesitant at first, I will admit, but the more that I looked into this game, the more I thought not only would I enjoy this game, but I thought you would too. So let's go over some of the big details about the game, what to expect, including things like the price and how it's going to be monetized, as well as what the gameplay loop is going to be like. So Cohh Carnage recently announced a new game that he is part of, Embervale, an RPG, solo RPG, Stardew Valley. You know what? I think, honestly, Cohh is going to be the one that can say this better than I can. Cohh calls it a new, cool take on what a Stardew Valley would look like if it leaned far more into that combat and had a darker tone. He goes on to talk about how this game has a massive procedural dungeon that lets you rescue people, farm, build your town, even fish. Of course, it's a game where Cohh Carnage is involved, so it has to have fishing, right? Like, that's a prerequisite, I think. That was probably something they included in the original pitch. I'm kind of paraphrasing here a bit, but that's essentially what I got from this little elevator pitch from Cohh Carnage. And it honestly sold me better than the trailer. I've played Stardew Valley, and while I was quite shit at building farms and often getting lost, I really enjoyed myself. I loved the interactions with NPCs, the sprawling story with mysteries to uncover, the RPG-like elements of improvement of weapons and the like. It was always just a little too light on the combat for me though, and a little too happy. And it kind of seems like this game is addressing those things that I personally didn't like, so I'm excited just for that. It's stated many times in this game that it's both combat heavy and combat focused, something I don't think many would say about Stardew Valley. It looks like Embervale is going to be exactly the kind of game I could easily get very lost in for a while, with one major condition. Is the writing going to be good? Is there going to be enough depth and complexity to the characterization of characters throughout Embervale? Or will they spend too much of that time and focus on just honing in on the combat? Now, granted, I know that a lot of players may just want that combat, but for me, if it's going to be an RPG, the story part of it, the writing part of it, is really essential. If you think back to any other RPGs you played, like Baldur's Gate, Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy, Dragon Age, or Mass Effect, the stories and the writing and the characters, sometimes the characters specifically, are what really make it fit and make it last, have a really lasting memory. It's kind of this part of this big stew where you have all the different things coming together to make something worth playing. The gameplay, the combat, the leveling up, the story, the characterization, all of the different little pieces that fit together. With a game like this, we already know that it's going to have fun, satisfying gameplay loop with grinding and growth and interesting combat. We already know that the graphic style will work. It's worked very well for Stardew Valley. And they're even taking feedback on those graphics, like right now. They're already making changes within days, literal days of them being made. Get more to that at the end of the video, because to me that was just really impressive to see. But the writing, the story, character development, and engagement, it's not just the gameplay loop that made Stardew such a hit. People got very attached to characters and their stories. This is what I will personally be looking for in Embervale. Does it have a strong narrative that pushes the player forward? Are the characters you encounter three-dimensional, or do they feel tacked on? Games like this for me need to have a feeling of a drawn-out TV series or book, because it's generally going to be slower paced than, say, Elden Ring, where combat and the beauty of the world were often more important than the story. And yes, Elden Ring lore nerds, I am calling out your game. There is a lot to love about Elden Ring, but for me, the way the story was presented and how it kind of like fit together, not it. It's not how. That's not why I put so many hours in Elden Ring. After all, there were other reasons, like frustration at how many times I die. The There is some good news in this front though, because both Cohh and the Steam store page for Emberville do mention a strong narrative, at least, and the ability to kind of rescue citizens and have them assist you along your way in this gigantic procedural dungeon, which I'm really excited to see how that works out, and like how big and how big and expansive is it. And the thing is, we might not have to wait that long to get to try out. But what is Cohh's involvement specifically? Well, Cohh was very upfront. It's a project that Cohh was brought in on as a producer, one who could help the game get this to the finish line while also helping to shape some of the core mechanics and designs of the game. He meets with the team once a week to discuss what's going to be in the game and what's been done with the game from the prior week, and to advise. And as I mentioned earlier, and as Cohh mentioned in his video on the game, the team works very fast. One of the complaints seen in the comments and live reactions across Twitch, and frankly one of my own complaints after seeing the trailer, was just how busy the outside looked. Basically, there was just way too much grass everywhere. It was difficult to focus, especially with how the screen kind of resets as you move. It was frankly kind of jarring. And that's gone. It's fixed. There's comments in Cohh's video on like the 26th, and it's now fixed, as seen here in this Twitter thread demonstrating the change. They fixed it in just a few freaking days. They took that commentary and immediately went to work in changing and fixing the thing that probably the thing that most people were mentioning. And yes, granted, this is a cosmetic change. It's not a huge change that they made to the entire game over a 2-day period, but it shows that they are already listening to their community. Which brings us to our next point of when the game is going to be launching. The game is going to be launching in early access, and hopefully they're at least aiming for early 2024. And I like to kind of marry these 2 points. The fact that they already listened to people's feedback and changed how the game looked a little bit, and then the fact that they're in early access. Because early access for a long time has kind of felt like basically like companies trying to take advantage of the ability to put out an unfinished product and get some money for it. And that's kind of been how I was viewing early access in a lot of ways until the release of Baldur's Gate 3. See, now I backed Baldur's Gate 3, I bought Baldur's Gate 3 in early access when it first came out, well aware that I was not getting a finished product and I was paying full price for it. And I enjoyed my time in it and I gave feedback. You can even, if you go search through the reviews of Baldur's Gate 3, I left a review in like 2021. But it's a game, it showed that early access can be used to actually gather shit tons of feedback. Tons and tons of feedback that can be used to help the game become better than it was going to be without early access. I strongly believe that if Baldur's Gate 3 had just stayed in closed development with no player interaction with it, we would not have gotten the game we ended up getting. There are key things that players were able to give feedback on with Baldur's Gate 3, and Larian Studios has been upfront about this, that they took a lot of the advice they got, a lot of the feedback they got from early access, and they applied it. And it sounds like that is exactly what Emberville is trying to do with their early access period. A proactive early access period that is designed for players to give feedback to the game to make it the best game they can. And it's also not going to be that expensive. The game is targeting a $25 price point to launch. That's pretty freaking solid, especially when you see other like AAA games now launching at $70 or more at this point. This feels like a good price for this game, where it's gonna have a solid enough gameplay loop. It's gonna provide a lot of value to people playing it, as long as it's expansive enough. But $25, that's a very reasonable price for a game at this point, especially when you consider that Cohh Carnage came out full-throated and said there will be no microtransactions in this game. This game is going to cost $25. That's how much it is. I personally cannot wait to get my hands on this game and start testing it out and trying it out. I'm hoping that in early access there's not like an NDA and maybe I can review it and hopefully get some good look at it early in 2024. Or if they have to delay it, fine. But I'm just hoping that we get to play it some point soonish, because it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a game that is right up Cohh Carnage's alley, and I'm glad that he's able to both be part of the development of the game, but also have a team that is working on it, independent team from Cygnus, that is more experienced in making the game itself. I like, no offense to Cohh, he knows a shit ton more about games than I ever will. But it's nice to know that like it's not just like some project that is trying to use Cohh's fame, right? It's someone like that takes his understanding of games seriously and is using that knowledge and helping with it while also creating the game themselves. I'm just excited to see what comes of this, what the project will eventually look like, and I just want to get in and play. Just please make those characters, make the characters matter. Make them matter as much, like basically if you make the characters matter as much as Stardew Valley with really cool freaking combat, dude, this game is gonna be awesome. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Redbird Flynn, and I hope you have a wonderful day.